Hey everybody, welcome back to a delayed telecast of our weekly podcast. My name is Patrick Tan, General Counsel for ChainArgos. With me, as usual, every week, our CEO and Chief Data Scientist, Jonathan Reiter. Of course, we do apologize for the late telecast. That's because I was traveling last week, and we wanted to give you that studio quality sound you've come to expect.
Even notices if you publish
Anyway, so what are we going to talk about this week? We're going to talk about the eXch Shutdown. That's eXch Shutdown. And then Kyrgyzstan's Ruble stablecoin. Could there be a more Soviet name for this thing? A7A5?
Yeah, I was kind of curious what that's about.
I mean, this could be a surface-to-air missile, but it's a stablecoin.
It could be a refrigerator part. I mean, it's just a standard product code. Yeah.
Pretty Soviet with that stablecoin naming.
A super micro product. They're equally good at naming things.
And finally, we'll talk a little bit about the Kyberswap Hack Prosecution, which has raised interesting legal concepts, which I have to admit I'm not extremely familiar with, and I don't proclaim to be some kind of legal scholar, but even this is a little bit bizarre for me. But let's just talk about the eXch Shutdown, the eXch Shutdown, and what does it have to do with Railgun, John?
Yeah, okay, so I think eXch is a instant exchange that voluntarily shut down, and they claim that they voluntarily shut down. I actually have the quote in the notes here, but our project is the subject of an active transatlantic operation aimed at forcibly shutting our project down and prosecuting us. We're not saying whether or not that's true, but these guys claim that that's true as a result of the use of the system by the Bybit hacker. And it's plausible that's true. They have been running an unknown location, off-chain, custodial, fully trusted instant exchange. So it's one of these cross-chain, multi-asset things where you send the assets to an EOA, and then they send out the assets you asked to trade for. So, you pass control to their software. This is a long-running theme where these people claim they're non-custodial, but that's only because they didn't choose to steal your money. It's not because they couldn't steal your money. Whatever. Then I'm putting. I guess they don't necessarily take a position on compliance beyond saying they don't think they're subject to compliance. Since we don't know what country they're based in, it's hard to have a strong opinion.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah.
Okay. So they've said that they're shutting down. They have admitted that they were used by, or acknowledged they were used by the Bybit hacker, at least some small amount. There's a dispute about how much, or whatever, but fine. They were definitely used and have sort of accepted that. What I find interesting here is the difference between eXch's behavior and Railgun's behavior, because Railgun similarly was used by, well, in that case it was sort of, I think, more accepted North Korean hacker, whatever. Hackers used it, and then they just denied outright that they were ever used, refused to admit that it was ever used by them. Railgun is still running, and the team says that they have a solution in place that's not a solution and is acknowledged to be not a solution. There's a fair amount of public discussion of that. It's just interesting to watch the difference here, and I guess we're kind of curious what the legal framework is supposed to be. If just issuing false denials over and over is considered sufficient, fair enough. There's definitely some. One of these guys spoke to, I forget, was the FBI or something, who at least at the time he thought that he was doing the right thing. They give people time to make decisions and prosecute it, investigate, whatever. But eXch has taken a very different route. So I just kind of find that interesting. If you look at the quantum of business done by the hacker in each case, the dominant use of Railgun for quite a while was this hacker. So the massive fee spikes, we've documented all this, the massive fee spikes and whatnot. So clearly this one user, whether it's a hacker or not, was an outsized. If you look at eXch, actually use didn't massively spike around the time of the Bybit hack. It's been used a lot. It's fallen off subsequent to their announcing they were shutting the exchange down, but I mean that's kind of neither here nor there. So in one case they're just denying an obvious fact that was their dominant user. In another case they're acknowledging that, right? So that's kind of better behavior, right?
Less worse.
Well, okay, less worse. I mean, less worse and better are kind of similar things, right? In both cases, they are saying that what the Railgun guys did and the eXch guys said they will return the fees that came from the laundering of the dodgy money, which, I guess, how does that work? If you do something wrong, you admit it's wrong, it's making restitution. But if you don't admit that you did the thing and you just take the money, then I guess you're just stealing the fees from whoever was going to receive them otherwise, because what's your justification if you deny that the bad guy used the system? Right.
It's called making amends.
Like only for the guy that admits they did it wrong.
Yeah.
So if I'm a staker, investor, whatever, user of the system, and the operators of the system are claiming it wasn't used by any bad people, then why aren't I getting my share of the fees? I mean, I'm not suggesting anyone actually take legal action there, but that's not making restitution. You have to acknowledge that you were wrong.
That's step one.
Yeah, you have to do step one to do step two. I don't know. Restitution is one.
Restitution
of
is making amends. I think that's step 6 or 7.
Somewhere in the 12 steps. It's definitely the first step in admitting that you have a problem.
Yeah.
Anyway, the Railgun guys, sort of the design is a bit different, right? So their aspiration is to build a completely decentralized, totally trustless, whatever operation. eXch is not that at all. They're not even really pretending it's that. They did a little bit of lip service, but it's an off-chain centralized service. They can declare they're shutting it down, so that's kind of admitting they run it. Railgun had some issues with taking some of their fees out of the centralization, moving it around and shoving them back in, right? I don't know whether being mostly decentralized and occasionally breaking it open when you have a problem is any better than just running the whole thing in the first place. I mean, from a legal perspective, I think they're identical. If you have the ability to crack the box open, then you're in control. But whatever. I mean, it's a little bit more complicated, I suppose. At least the Railgun guys are aspiring to be decentralized. Does that count for anything legally? So there is, and we'll talk about this maybe this upcoming week. There are proposals out there for SEC regulatory safe harbors that do grant immunity, temporary immunities, safe harbor, on the basis of aspirations of decentralization, whether or not you're in possession of a plan to get there, whether or not there's public evidence your product cannot be decentralized. So some people do think the aspiration should count. So, it's interesting if you look at compare and contrast the eXch and Railgun cases and people supporting various things. It seems like there's plenty of people who believe that denying the truth and aspiring to something you have no intent of ever achieving, or no ability to ever achieve, no plan to achieve, should be sufficient to present you with legal immunity, and that admitting the truth in general isn't the better route from a regulatory perspective. If your legal proposal pivots on people who lie should be given better treatment than people who tell the truth, I think you're unlikely to actually get those rules passed after they've been through the whole vetting process. Similarly, I think we'll talk about this SEC hearing about custody that happened just a few days ago, where there's a lot of people talking about stuff that's, oh, really, the product that you think should be given an exemption isn't your company's product. That's interesting. Your company's documentation says something different than what you're saying should qualify for them. So there's a lot of inconsistency in this one. The eXch Railgun is really a great comparison to put together, because the eXch guys have been honest about what they're doing, even if some of it was not okay. We're not suggesting, although I don't know what country they're based in, so, in some countries it's legal, right?
Yeah.
Although probably they're not following the rule, they are. But they're at least like, this is what we're going to do. We're going to try to avoid detection. Something really bad happened, and we're going to shut the system down. Sorry, we used it for that. We're returning the fees.
That instinctively feels not so bad.
It feels kind of better than just denying that you were ever used by bad people in the face of, incontrovertible evidence that you were. And then pretending that you have no control over your system when you exhibited total control over the system at various times. Like that. The shaggy defense isn't supposed to work.
It's not supposed to work, I think.
It's not supposed to work. I mean,
that's the operative concern here.
The song is sarcastic, right? He's not actually.
Well,
it's a great video. The video is fantastic.
Anyway, moving on. Let's talk about the A7, A5 ruble-based stablecoin, comrade.
Yeah, I don't know where his name came from. So, Kyrgyzstan has set up
from the Kremlin, obviously,
Russian ruble-based stablecoin. I think rubles flow pretty freely in Kyrgyzstan. A lot of the CIS rubles are, or have various times been, places that aren't currently involved in fighting with Russia. Rubles have circulated for a long time. So the ruble has not been a restricted currency for a long time. It is currently restricted from the other side, right? So a lot of the West restricts whatever ruble-related stuff. But Russia and central bank has not had meaningful ruble restrictions for I think in 2006 they removed the last restrictions. It's been a very long time. So Kyrgyzstan is trying to set up a ruble-based stablecoin, given that rubles are perfectly legal to use in Kyrgyzstan, and I don't think most of the world has problems in general with Kyrgyzstan, like they are likely to have with the Russians.
Most of the world would struggle to point Kyrgyzstan out on a map.
That's also true. Well, you've flown over Kyrgyzstan many, many times, so you should know exactly where. You know what it looks like at night, out the window. I think the spoiler alert is it looks black like everything else, but their financial system is not the Russian financial system, so most of the world should be more open to dealing with that, given the current political environment. So they can issue such a stable coin. That's fine. Now, it is it is interesting in that rubles aren't used for a tremendous amount. Russia had been trying to pay for goods with rubles and do some more internationalization of the ruble to deal with sanctions. There was a lot of discussion about India becoming frustrated that they had a huge pile of rubles they couldn't do anything with because they didn't want to buy anything from Russia. This is public reporting from India saying we don't like this bilateral ruble deal because what are we supposed to do with these
Buy
rubles?
more MiGs.
I mean, I think they buy some equipment and I guess they buy oil and whatnot, but that's about
all you can really
India's
do.
a massive food producer, so I don't know if they're buying Russian pickled fish, whatever. Doesn't matter. Yes, I don't know who's going to use this thing, so we can just do a little sec. So this is the Tron token and
Not the Tron token, the A785.
A785 on Tron.
On Tron.
So this is intentionally run for too long. This thing just launched, and there's some activity. These are amounts of rubles, fine. And if you look on Ethereum, there is not much action here since the thing launched. These are, a couple thousand addresses, but very small amounts. And in fact, so this token is a interest accrual token. So it's a rebasing token. So it doesn't really work in DeFi. And this token here, A75, is the wrapped version of it, the thing to be used in DeFi. This is total volumes in millions, in rubles, right? So this is, what is it, 100 or so, to get that to dollars. So much smaller actual amounts in dollars of use here. And the number of addresses is vanishingly small, right? 10, 20, whatever, thousands of total transfers. So that tells you that there's a version of it. You can't use the rebasing token well in DeFi because most of these things don't work with rebasing tokens. So it tells you there's not much use in DeFi anyway. So people are using it for payments. Tron, they're not even producing a wrap token intended to be used in DeFi, which tells you no one expects the Tron platform to be used for DeFi anyway. It's purely payments. Now, interest rates are substantial in the ruble and have historically been high. So foregoing interest in rubles is a sign that, what are you really doing here? I don't really know. And if you look, I should add this one back here. So if we look at the largest address users of this thing, nobody's got any tags. There's a Gate.io dollar withdrawal this is one of the biggest users of the thing. And then most of the transactors are just totally untagged addresses. This is whatever, receivers, senders. Note that because we tag large users of stablecoins, we can be very confident that none of these addresses is actually an established exchange because it's not listed as a top 100 user of any stablecoin that we've got or of any other token. And the easiest way to find, this is an exchange, but I don't know what it is the thing, the top holder of a whole bunch of whatever, various stablecoins and other tokens.
Largest sender, largest receiver, a whole bunch of something like that.
If they're just
more
untagged,
information,
it tells you here that these just aren't busy addresses at all. Now, there are only 13 uses for this guy of A785, but it also tells you they're not doing much of anything else. So either this mere exchange that they claim is the main one using it is using completely fresh addresses or is just a fresh exchange that doesn't have anything else on it. I know we don't really know. I don't have any deep insights into that, but it is interesting to see, the contrast between an Ethereum, they're saying maybe it'd be used for DeFi, and Tron, they're not even pretending it'd be used for DeFi.
Yeah.
And that it's all just completely fresh address infrastructure. Look, if I was trying to set up a ruble payment product, I wouldn't want to attach it to any of my existing businesses lest there be political problems and banking problems. So, in that sense, well done, whoever's setting this thing up. There's
Kyrgyzstan.
Dollars off Gate.io. Well, I mean, Kyrgyzstan must have contracted with people to do it. The Gate.io is certainly a $30 million to the biggest user. So there's, maybe Mere Exchange is doing this with Gate.io, or who knows. We'll continue to see if anything's going on with that. Just it's named like a super micro product where it's a 40 character name.
Like it's a Soviet thing.
Maybe, yeah. I don't know.
All right, Kyberswap hack prosecution.
Okay.
Some of the terms here confuse me.
Yeah, so Kyberswap was hacked a while ago. There was a hacker. Somebody's accused of being a hacker. Fine. They were charged. This is a little while ago. They were charged with 5 things, right? And we'll just go through them in order. With these are approximately in some cases, exactly the crime they're termed with. Otherwise, it's a stylistic thing. So one of the counts is for wire fraud.
Okay.
And there are plenty of quotes for this person saying they were trying to trick the system into giving them money. So there's a pretty solid argument that they intended to defraud people and took money from them. The third count, we'll come back to the second count, is extortion. This is the guy who said he would commence negotiations with the team after he was fully arrested.
When
if he didn't pay them, he would. So, I think a lot of those are kind of textbook extortion. So again, fair enough. Interesting. And then he made attempts to hide where the money came from and was going, and he's charged with money laundering, conspiracy, and money laundering. So, those are all plausible. To be fair, the extortion one's kind of amusing in that some of what he did could be taught in classes as here's an example of extortion because it's in writing. It's very clear.
We will begin negotiations when I'm fully arrested.
It's not even like you have a really nice restaurant there. It'd be a shame if something happened. Like standard mafia movie, whatever, extortion threats. This was I will do X if you don't pay me I will only give you this money back if you will agree to not go to the authorities. This kind of stuff. Now, those are all fine, I guess. I mean, assuming he's actually the one who did it, the person who sent those messages pretty clearly committed wire fraud, extortion, money laundering. I mean,
he actually said that he intended to defraud people.
Well, I mean, this guy could argue it's not him. Right?
Yes.
And he might not. I mean, it might not be him. I have no clue. But the person who sent those messages is definitely an extortionist. Now, the second charge is the one that we find interesting. He's charged with damage to a protected computer. Right?
Yeah.
So this is the thing that goes back to late 90s era computer crime laws. In fact, we know a lawyer we could have on the podcast to discuss this a little bit. But in this case, according to the documents, the damage to a protected computer charge pertains to him damaging the Ethereum virtual machine.
You heard its feelings?
Well, and there is a definition of damage that's given in the law, and it things like DDoS, data corruption, those kinds of things are what the law and the law is explicit, right? So you can go through and read the statute, and it tells you exactly what counts. There was no DDoS. First of all, the Ethereum virtual machine is not a physical computer.
No.
Right. So it's not.
It's a spiritual one.
Well, I mean, it's people running a simulator, so you can't really damage a simulator. You could screw up a simulation by corrupting the data, but there's no allegation that happened.
No.
The wire fraud part is saying the balances in the system now correspond to me getting the money instead of you. But that's not, what is it, ransomware hack where they encrypt all the data. It isn't that. That didn't happen, right? There was no DDoS. I mean, no one's even claiming that there was any kind of denial of service situation here. So the Ethereum virtual machine, such as it is, the shared instance that the Ethereum network is running, never had any problems. The data integrity is all fine. So it doesn't make any sense to me how this guy can be charged with this. Again, he seems, whoever it is guilty of the other four. But that didn't happen. And if you're going to say that damage to a protected computer applies to smart contract results that you don't like, no, I mean, that's really, because that one is, whether or not damage occurred isn't really an intent thing so much, right? The extortion one relies on, it's just a facts and circumstances analysis of what happened to the machine. Was this machine damaged? And if I can say my program wasn't supposed to produce that output, this guy tricked it, and that counts as damage to the,
yeah, he emotionally damaged the thing because the machine's supposed to give the right answer.
Yeah, that one seems really ridiculous. That one seems really ridiculous. Whether or not that actually makes a difference in the sentencing is not really clear because sometimes they can just make it 400.
Well, I mean, in defense of the
but it does show a lack of understanding of how.
No, I understand, but
you can't damage the Ethereum virtual machine.
I understand from a matter of precision why we find this objectionable, but in defense of the prosecutor, sometimes you just throw stuff at the wall and see what sticks.
Well, but they've done effectively the same thing in the Pereira Bueno thing. It's also the Eastern District of New York, right, where these guys, the money launderers, they were trying to conceal where the money came from. Yeah. So it's a separate conversation whether or not you think that should be a problem, not a problem, whatever. But the software had a bug in it, but they're charged with forging a digital signature, which they didn't do at all. They submitted a knowingly invalid to trigger an error condition based on determining the signature didn't match. Right? That's gotta be okay.
I do.
I'm not charged with breaking and entering if I realize my key doesn't work and I go somewhere else. Yeah. That's not.
Well, depends.
No, I mean. That's not.
Well, it depends on something else. That anyway. So
other
moving on.
Circumstances depending on the legal system. No, I mean that's a little more complicated, but It's not breaking and entering to trigger an error condition to see if the alarm works. If you didn't break into the the thing is fine. Right?
Yeah, because you think about that a little bit, and the white hat hackers would get into a lot of trouble if that were really the case. And you took on this sort of interpretation.
There's a lot of.
I mean, again, I think just
it seems like not a lack of understanding of how this works.
It could be a lack of understanding. It could also be just throw as much as you can at the thing and see what sticks. And it's possible also that
the extortions.
No, I know. The rest of it's like you got them dead to rights.
Yeah.
But then you'd also have to see like. If I was a prosecutor, I'd just try to slip it as much as I could, see what gets through, and then you see if the judge catches it, and then it's also possible.
Well, the defense attorney should at least get that one through.
Correct. But it's also possible that either the judge or the defense attorney misses it and lets it through.
No, not fair enough.
It's totally possible because we can't just assume that's just the prosecution that doesn't understand. Maybe they do understand, and they say, if we can slip this one through, we might be able to slip some other stuff.
I would imagine it's the attempts to expand that old sort of anti-hacking stuff.
I would give I give it a roll of the dice, even though this one is a little bit. A bit of a stretch because I mean
the evidence is so strong. I mean, again, we have no idea how they're going to prove it's this guy, whatever.
Yeah.
But assuming they can do that, right?
Well, I mean, you shouldn't hurt the feelings of the computer. Computers have feelings.
It's a simulation.
All right. On that note, thanks for tuning in. Look out for this the next episode this week. That'll be coming out as well soon. Talk to you soon. Take care. Bye.